Joining me for more on this is Eleanor Clift. She's a political columnist for The Daily Beast. Eleanor, thank you very much for your time. In terms of what a post-Roe America looks like, several states have imposed restrictions on abortion already, while others have reinforced their ability to provide the procedure. Can you give us an overview of this divide and which states will restrict abortion, opposing, in comparison to those that will reinforce it?
Well, it's the blue states, the Democratic-controlled states on both coasts, California and New York, and the surrounding states around them, and the middle of the country, in particular the South and parts of the Midwest, are going to restrict the process of abortion care and perhaps ban it altogether. And as your reporter pointed out, there were literally women sitting in abortion care clinics waiting for their procedure to take place when the Supreme Court ruled, and these 13 red states, Republican-controlled states, had already in effect what they called trigger laws, so that as soon as the Supreme Court acted, a ban would take place in the state. So you had women, again, literally waiting for a procedure who now have to scramble, find some alternative. And as we all know, time is the utmost importance here. And if you're going to do this procedure, you want to do it in the early weeks of pregnancy. So this makes that very difficult, people having to find travel, having to find the funds for travel. And I don't think anyone is under the illusion that this stops abortions. It just makes them more dangerous, more difficult for providers to carry them out. And it divides the country at a time where our politics, we are so divided about so many things, that there's red America and there's blue America, and it's urban America versus more rural America. And so this adds to another huge hurdle for this country to come together. This is a divisive issue. But the ending of Roe doesn't make it less divisive, it makes it more divisive.
On that historical note, it'd be interesting to get a little bit of a comparison in terms of how things were prior to Roe v. Wade. What do you think a life for women, particularly in the sort of areas where there are minorities or perhaps low-income women, what kind of options do you think there will be on the table? Is this going to be a case of people having illegal abortions and potentially facing criminal time?
I think we could be seeing those kinds of stories come back and repeat themselves. But, prior to Roe, which was 1973, the governor of California, Ronald Reagan, had signed a progressive abortion law. You could get an abortion in California, and there was a law also in New York. So it was possible, again, for women of means to travel and to get abortion care. And there were provisions if the life of the mother was threatened, but you had to get two doctors to validate your request for an abortion. Billie Jean King, a very famous tennis star, in her memoir describes going before this sort of board in California in order for her to get an abortion in the early 1970s. So I don't think anybody really wants to turn the clock back to those days. And we are seeing now some corporations are stepping up and saying if their employees have to travel for abortion care, they will pay for it. You're probably going to have networks of women connecting to try to help other women with travel and that sort of thing. But this is bizarre in a country that has lived with Roe for almost 50 years. To go back to this kind of patchwork where there's a lot of it's like they want to inflict shame again on women who want to go through this procedure. And there are going to be all kinds of lawsuits. You could have other religious denominations suing about when does life begin. I mean, the Supreme Court has effectively said life begins at conception. Not every religion believes that. So I think the lawyers are going to have lots of lawsuits here going forward, and I think it's going to be a very chaotic environment for quite some time.
So what hope is there, looking forward to the midterm elections? Democrats hope the fall of Roe v. Wade will jolt abortion rights supporters into action, and that will translate into votes. But is it enough to turn voters' attention away from issues, especially like inflation off the back of a pandemic? Do you think that this issue will be strong enough to get those who are pro-choice at the ballot voting in more Democrats?
You have to weigh one against the other. It shouldn't be either or. But I think that the prime group that the political parties are focusing on are women in the suburbs. They are a deciding vote. They tend to vote more dominantly Republican. They didn't like the election of Donald Trump in 2016. A lot of them turned out to protest the day after his inauguration. But in 2020, they swung towards Joe Biden. Now they're facing the economic challenges, and they're also involved in what you might call the culture wars here about how children are being taught, and critical race theory, and all kinds of cultural issues have bubbled up. So the environment going into November looked very favorable for Republicans until this ruling was handed down. And this is taking away a constitutional right that today's women, for and 2 or 3 generations of women have had this right. And there's also this specter that other rights could be rolled back. And one of the justices, Justice Thomas, who actually wrote the Roe opinion, actually suggested that other rights, such as same-sex marriage and even the right to contraception, might be revisited. So I think fear and passion and emotion has been injected into this upcoming election. And of all the issues that are out there right now, the fear and emotion and passion now seems to have attached itself to the question of abortion, and that would favor Democrats. Whether that's enough to help them hold the House, I think probably not, but it could make the difference in some Senate races. And the Democrats, if they lose the majority in the Senate, the rest of Biden's presidency would have no available legislative agendas. So holding the Senate, maybe even adding a seat, now looks like it might be possible. So the politics have shifted enormously. And former President Trump, who of course pushed for the 3 Supreme Court justices who are now the driving force behind overturning Roe, he has apparently confided to friends that he doesn't. Publicly he said this is a big day for life. It's the biggest advance in a generation. But privately, he's saying he doesn't think it's good for Republicans. So there you have it. It's everybody wins something and everybody loses something. I guess it's kind of the way it goes.
So much on the table. Eleanor Clift, thank you so much for your time and your insight there. Eleanor Clift, a political columnist for the Daily Beast.